Ujai, and welcome to the Gator Gates podcast. We are grateful that we're here for another episode. This is going to be episode 3. And because 3 is a very spiritual number, we have a very special topic for you guys here today. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge really the ancestors, and particularly Nebnabala Musa Mora Denabeg, and the ancestors that are standing behind this great work in this temple, and the deities, the powers of nature that are standing behind this work. My ancestors, your ancestors, his ancestors, her ancestors, your ancestors for, connecting us through the virtual, through the internet. Before we get started, just a word from our sponsor, Sauce Hot Sauce. Sauce Hot Sauce began in 2007 when a small group of students traveling in West Africa were trying to think of ways to support charitable projects. One of the students traveling happened to be an artisanal hot sauce chef, and right there, Sauce Hot Sauce was born. Since then, Sauce Hot Sauce has prided itself on making exceptional artisan hot sauces with high quality ingredients to support good causes. We continue to do this with the best and tastiest offering of sauce flavors to date, with a focus on supporting displaced families in the Fada and Gurma region of Burkina Faso with the revenue from our sales. Try it out. Phenomenal. They got 3 different flavors. Island Crowned for the people that, got a little island in them. And then there's Salsa Verde for the people that got a little Mexican in them. And then Circuit's Fire for the people that don't have a little bit of white in them and like that spice. So, my name is Tutip Samahekwan Amir. I am your host with my co-host.
My name is Kajizri Mensai Kebtah, and I am here today with my elder brother and our guest.
I am Tiasta Mahekwarkuskli, first generation New Jersey Temple.
I love how every time we have somebody, you did it last week, but I love how every time if it's not me, someone is always talking about the generation that they're from in New Jersey, like
And
anybody
no one knows what we're talking about.
what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what we're talking
Nobody
about.
knows.
So when we say generation, we're talking about like the group of seekers that come in and join the initiation at a specific time. So a generation is the name of the group of individuals together, and then you get a generational name and all that stuff, all that jazz. I'm not going to go into it because we have a very special topic to talk about today. And it's in some ways this topic is kind of taboo. Not in some ways, in a lot of ways, let me be honest. And we wanted to talk about this because it felt like the natural progression from what we talked about last week. Because we live in a society where everything goes and anything goes, and anything has to be made acceptable because we live in a society of freedom and liberties, which means, in layman's terms, anything goes, which means you have the ability to do what you want, and you are able to do as you please, which means even if you are attracted to children, you can do that. Weird, right? So, before we get started and get in our topic, we're going to jump right in with rapid fire. So, one of our producers is going to name it off for us as we go through rapid fire. And then we're going to do our rapid fire segment to begin with, because we got a lot of good feedback that a lot of people enjoyed the rapid fire segment. So we're going to jump off with the rapid fire segment. So, without further ado, if you don't mind helping us out, Tutanen.
All right. So let's get started with some local news. So just recently, as today, we see that Marine Jordan Neely put young man Daniel Penny into a headlock, a chokehold for 15 minutes. And on the subway, he passed away. He unfortunately died. So this was a Marine, and then for the other guy, apparently he was like an entertainer, a dancer, or some type of
Like a Michael Jackson impersonator.
Michael
right?
Jackson impersonator. And so it's a battle of like is it race? Is it what's
So
the
the
concept?
Marine put him in a headlock.
Exactly.
Why?
And he killed him.
15-minute headlock.
Yeah, he killed him.
What was the reason?
15 minutes. That's a long time.
Apparently he was harassing people on the train. Being aggressive.
So this guy was harassing people on the train, and he deserved to be put in a headlock for 15 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean, they killed him. Like the guy killed him, right?
I mean, if you're in a headlock for 15 minutes, you're not breathing. Of
Yeah,
course.
he's gonna kill him. Yeah.
I mean, that to me is like you losing control at that point. 15 minutes, you can't like release the guy.
I mean, the thing is like I used to live in New York City. I don't live in the city anymore, but like there's like it. That's like the appeal of living in the city is like the crazy people on the train.
Appeal? I don't know if it's the
Yeah.
appeal, but it's
But
definitely the
it's-
like
but
highlight of
yeah,
the
but-
day,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's like
It's like you're coming home from work,
entertainment, maybe.
and then the guy that's dressed up like I don't know, you name it, he just walks in, and
yeah,
like the guy that's dressed up like the villain from Sonic walks in, and then
right.
you're just like,
or like the random pole dancers who dance on the poles.
yeah.
I've seen a guy walking on the train, and
Did
he
you used to
opened
do that
up
stuff?
the dancing on the train.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do that stuff. That
Because
guy-
I know you
I could see you
dance.
doing
Yeah,
that.
I could
I
see
could see
you.
you doing
I
that.
could
Nah,
see
that
you
wasn't me.
spinning around on the
Nah,
the handrail on top.
I thought about it one time, but I was like,
See,
what?
I'm not too far off.
No,
But I mean,
it's not worth it.
like back to the chokehold, like that. I mean, that to me is like you don't have control over yourself anymore.
I mean, I don't even know if it's control. I think it's more like you're just looking for a way to like
get out your
because
aggression.
no, he was a former
That's what it
Marine.
sounds
He was a
like.
former
Yeah.
Marine.
Yeah.
He
So
was a
those
former
guys have a
Marine.
lot of trauma from like going.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the guy did. I mean, was he actually deployed somewhere? Or was he just like an angry guy?
He might be. He's a
Listen,
white guy.
everybody-
Do you want to speak for your
We going-
fellow
we going
your
straight in
fellow
on
white
that?
people?
I
like
mean,
to start the
before we get to race, I think everybody in New York City, to some degree, is just angry. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
grew up in New York City, so I remember just going to work, taking the train, and then there'd just be some BS stuff that just gets you in a mood, and that the energy there is just like that. Everybody's always on
Everyone's
edge. It's
aggro.
aggressive.
Everyone's aggro.
So
Because you're going to work like 9 to 5 or sometimes like 9 to 10 p.m. Some people, like people work crazy hours in New York.
Yeah.
Some people don't go home. They just at the office.
Yeah, I remember.
Sleeping at the office.
I would get up at like 4 in the morning
Yeah.
to get to work for 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Open up a restaurant. Then sometimes I have to pull a double because
kind
you
of
never
restaurant?
know. I was working at this Japanese spot,
Okay.
but you never know because I was a manager, and you never know when people call out. You have to like cover their shift. So sometimes I'd end up working a double, and I wouldn't get home until like
Let's
2 or
focus.
3 in the morning.
Let's
All right, I think we need to move on, right?
Thank you. No. But okay, so like back to the New York City subway. Michael Jackson impersonator getting killed by the Marine.
Wait. Michael Jackson
He was a
impersonator?
Michael Jackson impersonator, and he
So
got
like was he
killed.
that annoying of an impersonator that the guy had to chokehold him?
He's dead. So I mean, even if we want to make jokes, the guy is dead.
Yeah, I mean,
And the
bless
thing
his
is
soul.
that
crazy.
the guy that killed him got out, like he was released. So then the question is like, why was he released? And then I think like the New York City mayor like made like some dumb comment about like this is why we need to take care of people with mental sickness on the subway trains.
Yeah, well, that's
And
a
it's
lot of
like,
mental
bro,
sickness,
go
yeah.
F yourself.
Is he talking about the guy who killed him or the guy who got killed?
That's the question, because there's a lot of justification for the person that killed him, and then there's some people that are like, he's a hero because he like stood up for everybody that was on their commute
Oh,
and blah blah
the
blah.
Marine?
The Marine,
But he
people
killed the
going
guy.
to town for the
But
Marine.
he killed the guy. I mean,
Yeah, he
that's,
killed the guy.
I mean,
You can't take that back. Spiritually, good
Yeah.
luck. May the force be with you.
yeah. I mean, I think, what's the next one?
Yeah. So, wait. Go ahead.
So let's go more international. So King Charles, he's being demanded by indigenous leaders for an apology and reparations. They're asking for reparations for the atrocities against their over the centuries.
What kind of reparation?
The return of their artifacts is one, but they're also asking for financial support to help them restore, their cities. And I'll actually read the nations right here. There's 16 different countries. So we have, let's see what we have. 1 second. Boom, boom, boom. We have Antigua and Barbuda, New Zealand, Australia, the Bahamas, Belize, Canada, Grenada, Jamaica, Papua New Guinea, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And they're asking King Charles.
King Charles.
King of
So-
England.
The successor of Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think King Charles is going to pay up. I don't think King Charles has the authority to even pay up. Like, if we're talking about authority, to like, you know, he's not in charge of that country. I mean, we're going to talk about monarchy now.
But isn't he?
No, there's
He's
a
the
prime
king.
minister.
He's the king, right?
He's a figurehead.
Yeah,
But is it
isn't
the
the
prime
king
minister the
actually in charge?
figurehead and the
Yeah.
king actually in charge?
Exactly. Yes,
No,
that's
how
what it
really
is.
No, the
Yeah.
king doesn't do anything. The king
Yeah,
is
but
just
He
the
like
doesn't
king-
a
have to
title
because
now.
the prime
but
minister
king,
taking
yeah, but
care
then
of things for him.
we have to make the distinguishing between power and authority then,
All right.
because the king has the authority, but then the prime minister has the power.
Right.
The people, right? According to the government, the prime minister has the power and the purse strings,
Purse strings, like what the
money,
financial.
the money.
Yeah, but then who reports to who? Does the prime minister report to the king, or does the king report to the prime minister?
I don't know. I mean, we gotta ask our UK initiates about this, but we don't really.
If we have
I
any
don't know
UK
this
initiates
structure.
on the line, please
Honestly, I
comment
don't know
in the
this
comment
structure.
section
But
and
I'm
let
just
us
saying,
know.
I don't think he I think he's just like a face. I think King Charles is just like a face. Like I don't think he has the power to do anything, really.
I
Well,
think he does.
I
Spiritually,
think
yeah.
If
I
king-
think they
spiritually he
yeah
is,
they
yeah.
have to really be the ones to really run the country, because interestingly they mentioned Jamaica, right? And me being from Jamaica, I know Jamaica up until
Name
recently
them.
name them, right? Jamaica up until recently is still like a commonwealth,
Yeah,
Which
Canada
is-
Of the
too.
queen, yeah.
right? So they're underneath the queen, well, the king now, supposed king, and you know they're trying to change that, but really the king is, or the queen is still the one that's in charge of the head of state,
On the
regardless,
money.
right?
Based on the
Even
money.
if we have a
She's
prime
on the
minister.
money.
No, she's not on the money, but
Oh.
like in the back end, there's even I forgot what they call them, but there's a certain a section of the military that is in direct access to the royal family, meaning like they have jurisdiction that only answers to the royal family. I mean,
And what do they control? The people that are indirect.
but that's what I'm saying. It seems like there's a government structure in place, but when you really think about colonialism, I think democracy and all these things is only to really fool people, because we think as people that we have power because we have a democratic system, but like who's really going to put the power in people, in the hands of the people, when you really think about
No.
it? Like, what do the people know about running an entire country? It's not going to
I mean-
happen. So
I
I, think
mean,
the
but
king
let's
really
even-
still runs things.
Maybe, but let's even talk about the reparations, because like what are you asking for? Reparations, like money, like straight up
Yeah,
cash,
exactly.
and like okay, that's cool, you know, but you're still getting caught in the system.
Well, I mean, it's like asking our brother had a video out.
Like it doesn't
Naba
it
Idita,
doesn't take things away.
but he had a wonderful video out. Check it out. It's on our Instagram page.
He said something very profound.
And he said something very profound. He said, it was something along the lines of like, the person that kicks you the feet out from underneath you can't be the one to give you the crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's the people that did it. So it's like, you can't go to the people that did it and then expect them to give you the solution, because they put you in the problem.
Exactly.
And they put you in the problem because they want to benefit from you being in the problem.
Exactly.
Wait.
Long drops.
Right, and where
They
does the
gave
cash
me
go? The
sense.
cash goes straight back in the system.
Straight back to them.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, it's
I really
like-
want to touch on that real quick,
Doesn't like
because
heal anything.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just to touch on what Irita said,
Name
like
them.
it's name them, right? So it's so important, because if you really, really, really think about it, getting back the artifacts, that's one thing. I agree with
It's
that.
important. That's super important.
Yeah,
because
That's
yeah, 'cause
important.
Those
You know,
could be
they're
spiritual.
They could
Yeah.
be
Right.
spiritual objects. They could be deities. They
Yeah.
could be,
Yeah.
Mhm.
spiritual things. So yes, of course, give it back. All the museums, shut it down. Give it back.
Right. But when we're talking about money, just to show you how intelligent they are, even with how they trick indigenous people, they have places called Bermuda, places called America, Jamaica. None of these places existed before colonialism. Now, when you really take that into account, you
Or
have
colonial
this,
borders.
colonial
Like,
borders,
the
right.
name of the place and the imaginary lines that we call
Right.
countries didn't exist. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about reparations, even the word reparations it really means to repair a nation. But if the nation itself didn't exist, then you can't get the reparations. And I think this is what a lot of people are missing, especially people like black people, not just in America, but all over the world, because we call for reparations for black people, but you can't name any specific nation or specific group to give that reparations to. So it's not owed to anybody. It's like it's, what do they call that? When it's like a trick or play on words, really?
Yeah,
That's what it really is.
It's like a mind trick.
Yeah, it's a Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
So people are really, really falling for this, and I think it's about
You
time
want
we stop.
reparations.
Yeah, I mean, initiation is a reparation. Initiation is the reparations to actually reclaim culture.
Well,
To
yeah.
actually, I mean, we could get into that.
If you
That's
don't
a whole
have
other
it, if
topic.
you don't have your culture anymore, but what we mean by culture is like what your ancestors were doing, not by the ability to say like, yeah, like I'm cultured.
Yeah,
All right, so what we got
that's a
next?
deeper topic.
All right,
That's a
so
whole topic
now we're
in
going
itself.
to.
I mean, initiation.
Oh shit! I'm so sorry.
So now we're going to Sudan. So if you're not familiar, as normal, America finds himself in foreign countries trying to impose democracy. So in 2019, Biden had the plan to, bring democracy to Sudan. And as of April of this year, the embassy and the diplomats of America pulled out of Sudan. And this led to over 100,000.
Okay, let me give a context because I'm
Give more of
Sudanese,
the background.
and I got you. I got you because what really happened is, okay, so right now there's really like maybe 3 or 4 superpowers, right? And the two main superpowers are what? America and Russia. And America and Russia are competing for really the natural resources that are on the planet, specifically within the continent of Africa, right? So Russia made an agreement because Sudan recently overthrew the dictator Bashir, the guy that was a president for like maybe 40 some years, a very long time. They overthrew him, and yeah, something like that. I don't know the exact amount of time, but they overthrew him, and then the government that was the transitional government that was in power, they made an agreement with Russia to allow Russia to come in and build a naval base. Now, America is like, nah, because you have to understand that Sudan is geographically located in an area that's it's on the continent of Africa, but it is considered like a very strategic port of Africa. And there's
Because of the Red Sea.
East Coast,
because of
right?
everything else North Africa. But it's not too far from East Africa, what's considered East Africa, like
considered East Africa,
Ethiopia, Eritrea, so on and so forth. So it's considered like it's a very strategic place to have control the ports, to control the exports and the imports of what's coming in and what's coming out. Long story short, America is not happy with a country that's trying to establish itself, that's trying to get out of the thumb of colonialism to establish itself and build an alliance with Russia, because Russia is considered in complete opposition of America. So a civil war of sorts broke out. The civil war is between the Sudanese army and what is called, I think, RAF. Correct me if I'm wrong. RAF, and what they're doing
Our producer
is...
looks confused.
I know, yeah. Our producer's like, I did not expect you to know this about
you
this topic.
You know more than
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I'm Sudanese, so my heart is bleeding because all my family is there, with the exception of my parents. I don't have much family here.
So essentially, people are leaving.
It's a
fleeing
proxy
the
war.
Country.
It's a
People are
proxy war. But it's
people
not
are
to be
fleeing.
confused with the proxy war that's happening all throughout the continent of Africa, because there's particularly like the Arabs, and there's like the Russians, and there's the Americans and the Chinese that are trying to gain
Which is
control
Russia's
over
ally.
the continent of Africa. So
it's like
it's a proxy war. Don't
people
fall
are-
for the tricks.
Right, but people are fleeing, and this is like the game that the superpowers are playing. Like every few months, you hear of another country where people are being displaced.
Exactly.
And then it's like other countries need to
But
open
in
their
Africa,
arms.
for the most
In
part,
Africa,
yeah.
right, in the Middle East, like, and it's like people, then other countries need to like open their borders, open their arms to a flood of refugees.
Yeah, but I
which,
mean, it's like the
they
people
didn't-
that are creating the problem are like, we don't accept refugees unless you're white.
Yeah, I mean, it's like ridiculous. It's like
I
creating
mean, why
a
would they
problem.
accept anyone if they
creating a-
created the problem?
Creating a problem that
Well,
didn't
that's
need
the
to
thing.
happen in the first place. And then creating like a false sense of like, well, we got you.
Exactly.
Right? When it's like, okay, well, yeah, we'll take you in. Right? But it's like all and like America and Canada and like we're accepting like refugees from different countries all over the world, but we're creating the problem.
One thing I want to say though, what you said the Middle East. I want to make this very clear. It's gonna upset a lot of people. There is no such thing as the Middle East. It's all Africa, or as we know it as Merita. So I don't care if you think you're an Arab
dare you?
or wherever you think you're from, Pakistan, Israeli, whatever. You're an African. Get over it.
Israelis.
It's
The
dropping
Israelis
some
are like, don't
dropping
loop
some
us in. Don't
Well, of
group
course,
us in with the Africans.
except the Israelis, you guys can go back to wherever you actually really came from, wherever that is.
Yeah, that's not Africa, I'll tell you that much. And
next one?
what they so-called say about building the pyramids, bullshit.
Next
What's the next one?
A note. So we're gonna go to Rwanda. Unfortunate news. Due to intense rains, there was a flood and landslide, which killed more than 130 people. So prayers
In
out to them
Rwanda.
in Rwanda. Yeah.
Recent. This just
No
happened.
prayers out to
On
Sudan.
May 3rd.
Damn,
You trying to play my
wow,
people?
This just happened.
Come on.
You said
man.
prayers out to Rwanda,
Oh,
but
yes,
you didn't put
all
prayers
all
out
of
to
them. I mean,
Sudan.
This is like
Africa
Mother
needs
Nature.
help right
I mean,
now.
What
this is
about
Mother
prayers out
Nature.
to the Michael Jackson impersonator's family?
Yeah.
We all need
You're
it right
fired. Yeah.
No, I mean, this is Mother Nature. I mean, this is happening all over the place. Mother Nature is reacting to the things that humans are doing on this planet that we should not be doing, the destruction that we're bringing to nature itself, to ourselves.
But what kind of flood was it, though?
I'm not really too keen on.
Do you know what kind
the
of flood it was?
The intense rains led to flooding, but eventually a landslide was like the big.
Intense rain, and then it was a landslide.
Yeah,
So, like, what is it like? Is it like what kind of flooding are we talking about? Are we talking about like just like the lack of infrastructure for like flooding to happen, or
It just says that it was unusually strong and long-lasting rains. So it's not what they normally deal
would
with.
that be a
So
problem?
that sounds interesting. You said unusually, and it's
Yeah.
like something that they're not used to dealing with. So to me, I have to go back to what Tiasto was mentioning, that it's Mother Nature, because if you really pay attention to like what we call natural disasters, we don't really see too much of natural disasters really in the continent of Africa like that. And
Nope.
as initiates, we know that there's like spiritual reasons behind that, because there's more people who are, I guess we would say, holding on to certain spiritual traditions in a way. But
Well,
when
they're
you
still
look at the
connected to
history,
nature,
they're connected
for
to
lack of a
nature,
better term.
right? When you look at the history of Rwanda, it's been through a lot.
Yeah.
And Rwanda seems to be going through a transition in which people are starting to adopt more heavily the Western ways and the ways of Western society.
In Rwanda.
In Rwanda specifically. They're even calling Rwanda the China of Africa. I've heard that said
Oh,
before.
really?
Yeah. And if you really look at the history of it, with the whole Rwandan genocide, that thing was a whole setup. So I believe
You mean like Hotel Rwanda?
Hotel
That-
Rwanda,
what that
right?
stuff's about, yeah.
Right, all of that stuff. There's a whole setup that's happened, and I think the nature that's in those regions is angry, because again, that's something very unusual for those places in the world.
Yeah. For our listeners who don't maybe haven't had as much access to the temples that we visited and nature, it's like nature is alive. The thing that we're
And
standing
everything
on,
you
the
do has a consequence.
planet, Mother Earth is alive, and so it will react on you.
That's why you see
You know?
so-called natural disasters in certain areas, but you
Yeah.
don't see natural disasters everywhere. But you know,
Like the hurricanes in the Caribbean. Like if you
Stop.
check it,
Stop.
I'm just saying.
Stop.
I'm just
the
saying. If you
Haitians,
check,
the Haitians
if you
are coming
check,
for you.
Yeah.
no, it's not even
The
about
Haitians are
Haiti.
coming
Like
for you.
just hear me out. If you check
Say la vie, nigga.
where all the hurricanes happen, the pattern that
Yeah.
the hurricanes happen to hit in the Caribbean, happen to be the same patterns of the
18.
triangular trade. I'm
What you
just
say about it?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
We have some
Raymond is going
Haitian
next
initiates. So shout out to the Haitian initiates. We don't want to problem.
Big up my brother Heki Shetta. He just texted me actually. Heki Shetta, if you're watching, big up
the
yourself.
distinguished elder. He's not watching, but if you are, shout out to you. Heki Shetta, Sai Kebtah. What's next, Tutana?
And last thing on Rwanda, of course, they're saying climate change is one of the big reasons for this happening.
Bullshit.
You know.
Next.
So next, China, Zhao Ging. I can't pronounce
Is
it
that the
correctly.
president of China?
It's a new.
Do your best.
It's a new city of the future they're building.
Uh-huh.
They have self-driving buses, mega trains, and they built it in 5 years.
Man, I
it's-
need to go to China.
So China's constantly
Mega
pushing the
trains.
envelope when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
So thoughts on like this hyper development going on in China?
Harbor development in China.
Hyper development.
Is there any other context, or is that it?
It's just a continuation of what they're already doing, like implementing AI, surveillance, all these systems. But in particular, this city is it was so quickly done. But again, self-driving buses,
Self-driving
no
buses.
homelessness. Like they're
No
building
homelessness?
all this kind of stuff.
So like what,
People are living
killing
there
the homeless
currently?
people?
No, it's like the housing is so well developed. Even the busing is free. Like free transportation. So all this.
So
stuff
everything is free.
Yeah.
But it's
So
like,
how do they
But
fund it?
transportation? all that kind of
But isn't China? Stop. Isn't China? Isn't China a socialist country? So isn't everything technically
It's
free?
communist. Communism.
Whatever. That's the same. Communism and socialism is the same thing.
They're all the same thing. Communism, democracy.
yeah,
all
but
of it.
this is just one more move to all of us living in tiny little boxes, not interacting with any other humans, interacting with just machines, more computers. We go to the supermarket, your little robot gets you your food, checks you out,
You're a robot.
and then you get on your self-driving bus. You
Your self-driving bus.
You put your little chip in your brain, and then you go home and you go on your computer and you go in your AI and go to sleep. It's just like everything is like transhumanism now.
Singularity.
I have a
Singularity.
I have a little joke with the Chinese because I used to work with a lot of Japanese people.
Okay.
Shout out to the Japanese. And
We
we were
need
at
to
we were
turn
at this
off this
restaurant. No, we were at a restaurant, right? And there's a noodle machine.
Noodle machine.
Yeah, it's a noodle machine. It's supposed to steam the noodles for the ramen. And they dip in it, and for some reason the water wouldn't get hot. So then all my Japanese managers and all my Japanese guys, they come, they looking at the machine trying to figure it out because they're very technical people. They're looking at it and they're like, they see the name on the machine and they're like, oh, it's Chinese technology.
Like, like that's
Like
an
yeah,
insult,
it's an insult for them because
Yeah,
they have like a little
yeah.
rivalry
Oh,
going
okay,
on.
okay.
Rivalry.
They have a beef, yeah. Like Chinese try to colonize
Colonization,
Japan,
bro.
and
Yeah,
they wouldn't
China tried
work,
to
and then-
colonize Japan.
Yeah.
There's all
a
this
lot
sort
went
of,
on.
like, beef between countries,
Yeah.
like local beef. Yeah.
Local beef. You guys
No,
are
it's
totally
it's
diminishing
international. It's
colonization.
big beef.
Like what? Like you know what? We're moving on. Tutana, what's our next topic?
All right, so we're going to go to something that has resurfaced. It's been in the mainstream media for years now, and this is Jeffrey Epstein. So you might have heard about the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, his wife and assistant.
Ghislaine.
Girlfriend.
Ghislaine, which was a private trial,
Girlfriend.
His handler.
etc. So it's back in the media. They found apparently a mystery temple on Epstein Island. It's like painted with like blue stripes, a gold top, a dome top. Looks quite even a bit ancient in this design or appearance.
That burned down, by the way.
What,
It
the
did
temple
really?
burned
No,
down?
it burnt down. Now,
Recently?
Burned it down.
No.
Okay, hold on. Any other context?
And also,
Because
yeah, there's more context.
she's him from last week. Okay. Any other
and,
context?
and if
What
you
does
know-
that mean?
And for
Like,
those who don't,
you were
That's
like
that's why I took the conscious
you
out.
you were ready to burn things down last week, and then now she's ready to burn things down.
All right, Tiasta, it's your show.
Okay. Any other
Let us
context?
say this out.
And so, for those who don't, really know the situation, Jeffrey Epstein was involved in a very highly dare I say,
Profile, high
high profile
Yeah.
child trafficking scandal,
Yeah.
and pedophile scandal, and many important names from presidents to royalty to billionaires, CEOs, even the CIA chief William Burns, Bill Gates, and others were embedded basically with Jeffrey Epstein's operation. And so it's still coming out to this day. More names coming up. And people like Bill Gates again coming into the conversation.
Very popular guy.
So I mean, this is where
Bill
we're
Gates,
launching off
Epstein.
today. I mean, this is what we're doing.
So, like I said, our topic today is a good topic. It's a special topic, and we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and pedophilia. So,
Were you talking about it?
no, we're going. We're going.
Going
And we're not afraid.
Dun, dun.
And if you take us down, we'll go to Rumble. So, do as you
This
will.
is, I mean, this is one of those touchy topics. Like, this man is not alive anymore.
It's not
You guys
touchy.
realize
It's not touchy.
he's not alive anymore.
Speak on it.
I mean,
How do we know that?
I mean,
How do we know?
Epstein
Well,
did hashtag
okay,
Epstein
How
did
do
they
we
kill
know?
clone?
himself.
Did they clone him? And did
Wow.
they, put him on a
She
secret
went
island?
Yeah, you're fired. Get out of here. Like,
No, but they definitely took him out, right? I mean,
yeah. They took him out, or they got him out. They
He knew too
extracted him.
much.
They extracted him, or they killed him.
Right. He
Yeah.
knew too much.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then all the stupid people were like, oh, it doesn't work. I mean,
there's
surely
no
a
way.
jail can
there's-
shut down for one night.
There's no way they were going to let that go to trial. There's no
Why not?
way. Because the
Why
man,
not?
Okay, the man had
Name
over
them.
2,000 names in his little black book. 2,000 names.
This is
This
why
man
she's on the
of
show,
like
ladies and gentlemen.
high profile
Sure thing.
names.
This is her thing.
Yeah, she's like, we're
Like,
going to get them.
Bill Gates, CIA directors, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, politicians, artists, Noam Chomsky, like the art world.
Noam Chomsky?
It's like,
Come on.
I'm telling
That's a
you.
big guy.
I'm telling you,
Bill
all
Gates?
these names. Bill Gates is like
The guy
Him
from
and
like
Woody
tech
Allen.
world.
Him and
Steven
Woody
Pinker,
Allen. Him and who's Steven Pinker?
it's a famous scientist. Like he had he was in all the worlds.
some white
he was
people
in
sh-
art. He was in the scientific world.
What's his name?
Politicians.
Steven Pinker?
I don't
Steven Pinker.
What kind of name is that? Is
We're
that
coming
German?
for you.
Is
I
that
don't
German?
know.
Or what
Listen,
is
that's
that?
not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the point. This guy, he had all the things. Because you have to wonder why this guy's name got so big in the news, right? And it's because he had the perfect storm of things. I really thought about this. He had the perfect storm. He had wealth, he had money, he had connections, he had pseudo-intelligence, which you could maybe just call like charm.
Pseudo-intelligence.
He had like a charm. He could charm people. Social skills. And biggest of all, he had sex.
Sex.
He had sex.
He could
He
provide
had
sex.
with people.
He could provide sex.
Epstein and
I
Epstein
mean,
and Woody Allen would
it's
get
like
down.
it's like the big.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, yeah, Woody Allen was in that list.
You know,
She's like, I'm triggered.
I got a
Woody
question though, because with this Epstein thing, I was looking up about it a little bit, and it stated that they're not sure if these meetings actually occurred, but they
What
were
meetings?
scheduled. The
Bruh,
meetings with the people
Bruh,
like the director
I
of
read
the CIA.
I
and all
read
that
that
stuff.
they, but he
Alright,
wasn't the
alright.
director of the CIA at the time.
Right, but
Yeah.
also Noam Chomsky, all these people. And hear me out. I'm not saying that these meetings didn't happen, but this is what the media is pushing it as.
Yeah, but
It's
bro,
like
but
they
you
were
gotta
scheduled.
understand-
Media.
But
Okay.
even if it didn't happen, right?
There was a whole
Why
airplane. There was a
would
whole
they be scheduling
private
meetings
He
with
had a
this
private
guy?
jet. Yeah, he had a private jet, bro.
that he
Hmm.
was shuttling people from the mainland to his private
Lolita
island.
Express, right? Is that what they were calling
Yes.
it? Lolita
Yes.
Express?
Lolita?
Now this is a
Something
man.
like that.
Interesting.
Now this is a man who was regularly seen, on the regular, with young girls looking like younger than 16. Like prancing around with girls younger than 16. Now, apparently they were all wearing like college sweatshirts. So it was like cover story, appeared they're all college age. But like employees working for him came out later on where they're like, we're sure those were not of age.
Wait, so you're telling me
Girls.
that there was a whole like setup where they had like allegedly, because this is all alleged, right?
Alleged.
We don't know. I wasn't there. She wasn't there. He wasn't there. So we don't know. Allegedly, the story is that you had underage, meaning like under the age of 18
Yeah.
girls that would wear college sweatshirts
Yeah.
claiming to be from that college.
Apparently, I mean, listen, there's enough evidence out there, and this guy was indicted and got off somehow in 2007, like somehow by like some stroke of luck.
By luck, you
or
mean
connection,
money,
right? Or money and connection.
connections, meaning
Like there were so
dirt,
many
blackmail.
accusers and so much evidence that this man was not only sleeping with underage girls but trafficking them to wealthy businessmen, politicians, artists, scientists, people connected.
Politicians,
Now I will say,
celebrities, Hollywood.
disclaimer, all these names in his little black book, there's not proof that all of them engaged in this activity. There's not proof.
Well,
Maybe
maybe that's why
know?
he's dead, because there is proof.
Yeah, but how do you know?
I mean, maybe not
Because
all
I
of
mean,
them, but
like,
there's
if
proof
you're,
enough
like,
of them.
if-
Enough of them.
Yeah, but
engaged
the
in
thing
this.
is like, isn't the whole like the whole aspect of like how you like kind of like you get people from RICO cases, like RICO cases, like in terms of drugs and like racketeering and like the mob and all that stuff, the mafia. Isn't the whole basis on that is like just because you're around they can get you? Like they still haven't let Young Thug out on jail, and they
What do
let
you mean?
that
What do you mean? Just because you're around?
like when you know what a RICO case is.
No, I don't really know.
So like you know what a RICO case is?
Yeah. Come on, Sam.
Yeah, I know
Come
you
on,
don't,
yeah.
but so like let's explain it to our white viewers. A RICO case is like when you basically like you get a whole bunch of individuals. It's the way that they get the mafia. So it's I don't know what the exact acronym is.
It's like a charge for organized crime.
but it's the way that you get everybody in organized crime.
right.
It's the way that you connect
I see.
everybody
Yeah,
in
yeah,
organized
yeah,
crime.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
And the thing is okay.
But like, let's be clear. Like this guy, it was organized crime. It was because it was a huge network of people engaging in this essentially prostitution,
but hold on.
paying for women.
Hold on.
But they're all well connected in the system.
Okay, hold on. We're going too far too soon, right? Because like this is the thing, right? So for those that don't know, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein because we want to talk about pedophilia, right? And we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein was a known sexual predator. He was a convicted sexual offender in terms of having sex and being interested in underage women, okay? And there is this allegedly, we're speaking allegedly, don't take this video down. We're speaking allegedly about how there are the elite in the system, politicians, celebrities, Hollywood, music, you name it, whatever field, artistic field you want to talk about. Politicians, religious figures like the Dalai Lama, that are involved in the elite circles that are interested in little boys and little girls. Now, there's a lot of discussion around the fact that when's the last time you went to Walmart and you looked at that bulletin board where they have all these missing children? And then you think about all the kids that go missing and the stories that are reported and the stories that are not reported. And then you start to think like, man, where are these kids going? Like, what's happening to these children? Like, where are they going? Because it can't just be like, the villain from Silence of the Lambs just out here like grabbing little kids and little boys and little girls. Like, because so many kids go missing every year that you have to sit here and you have to think like, man, where are these kids going? And word on the street, again, allegedly, is that the elite are the ones grabbing these kids so that they can do satanic rituals and weird things with these kids, right? And Jeffrey Epstein begs the question where it's sort of like, is it real?
Well, it's like the Jeffrey Epstein thing is the like tip of the iceberg,
Why?
I would say, because it's the most openly publicized case of one of these highly elite, highly connected individuals getting caught for this thing, and
Caught?
caught, killed. I mean, whatever.
I would
mean,
say
like-
he was more so sacrificed because, like she said, he was caught, but it's really a systematic thing, right? Is if that's what you're getting at. It's like it's a larger network,
Yeah.
but because one of them got exposed, they had to, okay, we're gonna give this guy up
Take him out
to kind of protect the rest of us.
Because the amount of names he was connected to, like that could never get out. They were not going to let that fly. And the thing is, if you are, it's like, okay, you are seen constantly with like underage girls. It was it was almost like a known thing in these circles. Like he's the guy you go to if you want to pay for sex. Basically, like all these
With a little girl.
scientists with an underage girl, like
Yeah, makes
like
sense.
Scientists?
but
Scientists were like, where can I get some 7-year-old?
no, and
ass?
even like business, like wealthy businessmen. That's how he had his money. He connected. The founder of Victoria's Secret,
Yeah.
Wexler, whatever his name is.
No.
That guy, he was literally like essentially Epstein was his like personal assistant. Like took over, had power of attorney at one point for this guy.
Over the
who
Victoria's
was like
Secret
a-
guy?
Who was like a billionaire.
Which is the secret, by the way. Victoria's a man.
Victoria?
Why?
Victoria's a man. That's
what,
secret.
What does this guy have to offer? What does this Epstein guy? Apparently, according to all
we're
sources,
we're going down so many rabbit holes, and it's so hard to keep up
he's not
with
even like
what rabbit holes we go down. Keep going. Pause.
he's not even like a very intelligent guy. Like he didn't even have any like financial acumen. He didn't even have any financial.
Epstein,
Yeah. Like
aside from being a secret service, whatever secret service he was a part of, whether it was
Well,
the U.S. or
yeah,
the
yeah.
U.K. or
I think he was
whatever.
working for the CIA.
we can
You
get
think
down that
that's
rabbit
CIA?
hole.
Yeah.
Why did he get off? That first time in 2007, there was so much evidence against him in Florida. He should have been taken down in 2007.
Yeah.
But he got off. He got a plea deal that no one gets. It's like no one gets that deal. And apparently, the prosecutor in that case got told that he's intelligence. He's like, he's basically like secret intelligence. You got give him a plea deal.
Yeah.
Get him off.
Yeah, that's the only way. I mean, what kind of guy would be connected to all these rich people, all these powerful people, all these prominent
Yeah.
names? I mean, he's connected to the guy who's in charge of Harvard, for God's sake. Like, you have to be some kind of intelligence agent or some kind of government agent to be able to maneuver
get
through these spaces.
Exactly,
So-
to get off in the
So
judicial
hold on,
system.
hold on.
And I think the governments themselves are the ones who are actually behind these kind of human trafficking rings. Because if you really think about historically, who were the
Conscious
ones in
Reading
charge
said
of slavery? Who were the ones that was propagating these
Conscious
things?
Reading said it.
It was the churches. It was
Are
the
you trying to
governments.
distance yourself? Like, you're like, he said it, not me. White people, I'm still with you. Okay,
But quick question for you: have you ever heard of the Marmaluke dynasty?
Marmaluke?
Yeah, the Marmalukes.
No.
What is that?
So the Marmaluke dynasty is an interesting one, and I think it really, really ties to Jeffrey Epstein because you mentioned
ready.
the temple.
We gotta
Jeffrey
get back to the
Jeffrey Epstein had a temple.
Yes.
To me, that's crazy because he had a stone circle. It's a circle full of stones, and in the middle of it was a symbol of the sun. Meaning there was a lot of things going on that was more than just
Wait, Epstein had this?
Epstein had on the
On
island.
the island.
Near the temple, like, but I
Oh.
think it was either on the side or behind the temple was
Uh-huh.
this stone circle. And us as initiates, we kind of understand what those things kind of represent. So clearly this guy was involved in something deeper spiritually,
Yes.
right?
Had to be.
But what made it interesting for me in looking at the temple was that there's a temple that belonged to the Marmaluke dynasty. I think it's somewhere in Syria. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me, right? But
Can you
the
check
Marma-
that for us, Two-Tone?
I'm gonna give you the name of the temple.
No, that's
I
cool.
might butcher.
Keep going.
I might
Keep
butcher
going.
the name.
You check that for us.
But anyway, this temple, right? It represented one of these temples from ancient times during the Marmaluke dynasties. The Marmaluke dynasty was around like 500 BC or from 500 BC or AD, so on and so forth. You know, I get mixed up with their timelines. It's a little weird, but Marmaluke dynasty is pretty much this. They're people who were essentially slaves of the Persians or the Arabs, which is the Persian Empire, the Arabic Empire
Jews?
at the time, right? Yeah, the Jews, right? So
Epstein was allegedly Jewish. Keep going.
that's the
Allegedly
thing.
Jewish, yeah.
That's the interesting thing,
Epstein.
right? The so-called Hebrews or the Jews were actually enslaved by these people.
Israelites, yeah.
So even before there was anything called monotheism, they adopted that from these people that were there enslavers. Now, the Marmalukes were really captives from other civilizations and tribes and societies in which they enslaved, particularly Arabic children, children from the so-called Middle East, and Eastern European children. So basically white or Caucasian people. So what they would do is they would take the little boys and they would train them as soldiers, and then they would send those little boys to go out and conquer places in the name of their god. Now the little
Who is
girls,
their God?
their god, well, their main god, if you look it up, they're gonna say Baal, like, you know, the ancient Canaanite god Baal. Now the little girls, though, what's interesting, which is what I find very, very intriguing with this Epstein thing, was that they would take the little girls, especially the Caucasian ones, because that was like their favorite in the Mamluk dynasty, to take in these Caucasians from Eastern Europe. They would take those little girls and they would have them as sex slaves. Now, I'm only bringing this up because I find it interesting that Epstein is Jewish. And we know the Jews were actually enslaved by these people. And the Jews themselves were technically considered Marmalukes, allegedly, right? So they're technically considered Marmalukes, right? Now, this is really a cultural thing when you think about it. Because now we're talking about ancient history in which people were practicing enslaving young white girls. And if you look at who he was really targeting, it was usually young little white girls. And you mentioned the name Lolita, which is what? A Germanic name for young white girl.
Interesting.
Lolita.
Lolita.
Lolita itself.
Lolita itself.
He apparently had the book or like placed strategically around all of his houses.
Lolita?
The book Lolita.
You talking about the novel?
The novel.
The novel that
Yeah, because
that
he played
Stanley
into this whole
Kubrick
thing.
made. That was a movie. Stanley Kubrick.
It could be a
code
code reference that they're still using, because I know and I think, well, I'm gonna say I know that these people still practice their ancient traditions. It's cultural. Even we're talking about with pedophilia, it's a cultural thing. So that's why they're using that name Lolita, because it's like, hey, look, this is a German name for little white girls who we used to enslave.
Well, let's get into the temple, because
Wait,
the temple is
before,
very
before we
interesting.
go to the temple, I'm amazed that you know all this.
Like, where does
Like,
this
yeah, like,
live in your brain?
like why do you know this? Like, why were you able to pull this out?
I like
for
history.
This topic.
I like history.
Because
History is my favorite subject in school growing up.
I even picked the topic that we were going to talk about today, and I don't know any of that. And you know all of this. You're like Marmaluke, Lolita, Germans,
Well,
white women.
That's
little
why
underlings,
I'm
girls.
here.
Like, yeah, this is why you're
That's
here.
why I'm here.
This is why you're here. But I'm just
It's
like,
me.
I'm like, why? But nonetheless, keep going. Temple.
Okay, all right, temple. So, this temple on his island. So he is supposedly Jewish, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So
Marmaluke.
Epstein.
So you would think if he was going to have a temple on his island, it would be a Jewish temple, right? Correct. Now, the structure itself does not really resemble what a Jewish temple would look like. It looks more tending towards like a Jewish Muslim mosque.
Exactly, because they
Right.
were enslaved by them.
The way that it's structured. Now, the statues that are around this mosque-looking structure also do not look or match with any Jewish traditions. There's golden structures of like two birds on the top of the structure, and in the front, apparently, there look like the god Poseidon, like the Greek or the Roman god of water.
Now we're getting somewhere.
This guy.
Now it's interesting.
Now we're getting.
Now it's interesting.
That's the next meat that we need to pick.
This is like meeting of the minds. Tiasta and Conscious Riemann. It's like 10 assists, 20 points. 10 assists, 20 points. It's like he's throwing it up as an alley-oop, she's dunking. She's throwing it up as a alley-oop, he's dunking, and they're like, bah!
So,
All right, keep
like
going.
if we really want to get into this, like who were the ultimate founders or proponents of pedophilia?
It's Greek culture, of course.
That's Greek culture. It's documented. It's
Right.
like older men in society, older wealthy men in society would have younger boys as like,
So like the temple
Sex
was the
partners.
colors of the Greece flag.
essentially that's what
Exactly.
it looks like. It looks Greek.
Exactly.
This guy, he was waiting for somebody
waiting
to say
for
that.
that,
Yeah, he's like, I've done countless research on this, and I'm waiting for you to prompt me. Okay, all right.
It's like, I mean, listen, you have to understand that this whole culture is founded on Greco-Roman ideologies, culture, spirituality, belief systems. And here you have one of these guys, the elite of the elite, who seems to have a Greek-looking temple on his private property that he invites very wealthy and very prominent names to this private island regularly. So, like, what are they doing in that temple?
And you think about it, the Greek culture was all about catering to your carnal needs and pleasure.
Pleasures, yeah.
Carnal desires.
Desires.
Carnal needs are different from carnal desires, right?
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Carnal
Carnal
pleasures,
needs are like
desires, right?
food, shelter, carnal wants can be whatever you want it to be. It could
Liberty.
be like kill you,
Yep.
rape you, lord over you, impose myself on you through colonization, through imperialism. It could be whatever you want.
Which,
Chop your head off.
going back to colonization, right? Because I notice this kind of culture is prevalent in a lot of places within the Middle East, even going all the way into China.
What kind of culture are you talking about?
The idea and the aspects of taking little girls, young little girls, and even little boys, and using them for like a sexual desire and in a sexual
It's in
way.
Asia too, yeah.
Right. But most people don't know or
Right.
realize
It
that
The Dalai Lama's area?
I don't know about the Dalai
Oh my
Lama.
God.
I cannot speak on the
Ding.
Dalai Lama.
well, most people don't know or
coming for
realize,
you, Dalai
right?
Lama.
He's coming for you. He's
Yeah.
coming for you. I'm coming too. If he's coming, I'm coming.
That sounds so terrible.
Pause.
That sounds so terrible.
Pause.
We're not coming. We're on that. We're on you. and
Oh,
we're
you
coming.
know what? No,
Yeah.
no. We're not on him. I'm gonna put in my Jamaican phrase.
Yeah.
We're gonna forward for you.
Yeah,
Lady,
we go forward for you. Yeah.
Soon forward.
Yeah.
Soon forward.
Soon forward.
But anyway,
Yeah.
all of these areas, what a lot of people don't know is that the Greeks did a lot in terms of conquering the world. So a lot of what we call culture in the Western sense is really coming from Greek societies. And now the Greeks colonized not just what we would call the Middle East, but all the way into areas such as far as China, to the point where there was even horses that were bred in China that were known to be faster and stronger because they were horses that were bred from the breed of the horses that were used by Alexander and his soldiers.
How do you know this?
Now,
Where Where's this coming from?
Where's this coming from? It's coming from my mind, my brain.
Yeah, but like you
know,
it seems like you sit around and do like useless research
I used to.
until
I used to a lot. Yeah.
it somehow became useful. Like,
It's useful now. I'll tell you that.
yeah.
It's very useful now.
Gate of Gates.
Yeah.
Gate of Gates.
It's useful now. This is why you're one of the co-hosts, is because you just know, like, just random things that, like, you just question, like, how do you know these things?
Listen.
Like, why are you researching this?
Let me tell you
Or
about
when were you researching?
Let me tell you
this?
about me. From
No,
the time I can
no,
speak,
no,
I was questioning everything.
We
I
don't
had
need
to
your
know,
life story.
okay?
Just keep going. Alexander the Great and the horses and the Greeks conquering everything. Keep going.
But-
we don't need your life
Right.
story.
Anyway, as I was saying, folks, so this culture is a very dominant culture that was really spread across the world through a lifetime of conquering, through a lifetime of war. Now, when you look at going back to the Mamelukes, right, they were really sent forward to continue to spread the ideologies of their masters. Now, if you forward back to
Who
our
are their
time,
masters?
it was really what we would call like the Arabs now today, or the Persians, whatever. If you look at our time today, just looking at even slavery in the Americas, looking at the colonization of Africa, looking at even the colonization of Europe, because we tend to miss that Europeans themselves was colonized, because Europe was a very traditional place up until the point of the Roman invasions. Now, if you're talking about the Romans,
Meaning like
the
white
Greeks,
people colonize other white people.
white people colonized other white people.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
We had indigenous culture. I
Exactly.
mean, my people, Celtic people, Ireland. Shout
Right.
out.
Shout out to the Celtic people, the snake people.
Yeah, we had culture on that land until it
Right.
was wiped.
Right.
What was that?
That was the snake. It was but
So
what I'm trying to say is this.
I
though.
wasn't able to get the producers to give me new sounds. So I still have the same sounds from last week. So the only thing I can do is like drop Funkmaster Flex bombs.
like-
or
That's
hit,
why I'm
like,
here.
The gay. Why are you gay? You are gay. Or do the like, why
That's all
the
we
you
got.
lying? So I'm
Wait,
sorry that I don't have sounds
we-
for you.
No. I just want to finish this one point. Going back to
Yeah,
going
keep
back to
going.
this, right? This colonization of all these different cultural places and the spreading of this Greek culture. It seems like historically, for the Greeks or the culture known as Greek, the culture known as Roman society, to really thrive, they themselves had to adapt. They had to adapt in a way that they had to adapt to even the people they were conquering. What this means is that every time you conquered a new people, you had to implement certain policies, you had to implement certain ways of doing things that suited the area in which you conquered. Now, what this leads to is the various religions that we see. And the reason why I say that is because if you look historically, religion has always been the tool in which has been used to go out and fuel the minds of young men to go out and die and fight for their masters.
Crusades, yeah.
Crusades, always. Crusades, colonization of the Americas, colonization of the so-called Middle East, colonization of China. It's always done in the name of these gods. And it's only until we see Greek colonization and the
Roman.
aspirations of Alexander, which was then adopted by the Romans, do we see this idea of conquering people in the name of gods. Because before that, people respected others' gods, because people understood that the land is what dictated how you worshipped. People understood that the deities lived there in certain regions. People understood that. So before that time period, there was no such thing as conquering in the name of a god.
Right.
It just didn't make sense.
Polytheism was always a thing. In Medita, across Africa, polytheism, you would have different tribes worshiping different
Indigenous
deities.
societies, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
indigenous
Period, yeah.
societies across the world.
Right.
Different deities, different gods. And it's like, it was all harmonious because it was an understanding that nature contains a lot of different entities
Mm-hmm.
within nature, within the existence. And so how are you going to fight like one God, one spiritual power versus another? It all fits,
Exactly.
right? And so, I mean, if we even going to get into this, is like the tool of religion to wipe out, people's spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. People who are actually nature based, worshiping within nature, is like all it takes is a few choice ideologies to say that's evil.
Mm-hmm.
You worshiping that deity in nature, that's evil. And you even contacting your ancestors or trying to worship your ancestors, that's evil.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're gonna, even if you're gonna try to do your practices, your regular practices that you've been doing for generations within your family, even now we're gonna threaten you with violence. So we're gonna chop off your head if you keep doing that,
Yep.
right? Or if you keep using your traditional language, we're gonna chop off your head,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now getting back to the bigger topic, if we're talking about like, the let's just say the spiritual ideologies now that you have within the elite systems.
It's still the same thing that they've been doing for thousands of years,
Exactly.
because it's the same system they've been using to go in and colonize people and take people from places in which they know that they're trying to control, which is why we get these aspects of slave trades, which is going back to even what Epstein was doing on his island, because it's a cultural thing. Because these people, they know, the ones that are the so-called elites that are in charge of the world, they know this stuff. They know their history. They know their ancestors. They still venerate these things.
Yeah.
They still have their culture. That's why you see somebody like that would build a temple that looks the way it looks, even though he's so-called Jewish, but it's not a Jewish temple, because he knows his history.
They know
And he
about
knows where he
spiritual
comes from.
technologies.
Exactly.
They know about spiritual technologies,
So,
but how are they using them? That's
so we have we're lucky to have Kajas Raymond and Tiasta, because they are very passionate about this topic, and
we talk all night.
We
I
could
know.
go all
They're-
day, all
it's
night.
like the LeBron and Kyrie right here, Stockton and Malone. Like it's Jordan and Pippen. Like they're just out here, and like just it's the dynamic duo, right? And so let's go to let's talk about more about the because we've talked a lot about history, right? But let's talk about more about the elite and the way that they're all connected currently, because history repeats itself, and as history repeats itself, the way that history goes is that like you see aspects that never die, right? So what you will see that a lot of people maintain things, they hold things, they protect things, they preserve things, and as they preserve and as they protect it, then they understand where they're coming from to ensure that they know where they're going, right?
Right.
And it's very difficult when you look at the powers that be today to understand the history, right? Because I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were telling me that like they were having a hard time talking about, talking to one of their children that were being deemed as kind of like different. And I said, look, if this was back in the day, that individual would be like somebody that they would probably burn at the stake, because they would say like that person is different, to the point that they're like considered a witch, or they're considered like a warlock, or whatever they call it, right? Because of the abilities that they have. Now, our current times are not too far off. So if the Greeks were interested in having sex with little boys, right?
And little girls.
And little girls. and that was the culture, huh? Lolita, and that was, you know, the way you you did things, right? It seems like in today's day and age, we're not too far off from the elite, whether the aristocratic individuals that are considered at the top of the society. They elect this position where they look at the common folk or the smaller people as kind of like sheep or like individuals that can be utilized for their desires in whichever way, because they're looked at as expendable, right? It's like that scene in Braveheart where it's like, I am the lord of this region and I will have sex with every woman that is wed. And it's like that kind of thing,
Braveheart,
right? It's like some Braveheart.
Yeah.
Like, but it doesn't seem like we're that far off from those times. But the only thing is now we have things like this. Now we have things like phones. Now we have things like computers. Now we have things like technology. Whereas that like the thinking is still the same, because that's the thing that's really passed down. So how do you guys, I want you guys to really touch on and really talk about the aspects of like this elite, the elite, right?
Like, who are the elite?
Like, who are the elite, and how are they utilizing the so-called common folk for their bidding?
I mean, this is a big topic. This is like, we could go all night. Like, who are the elite, right? I mean, let's just say we have the elite that we know. Like the faces, we have celebrity faces.
Celebrities,
We have
politicians, religious figures like the Dalai Lama, like
The Pope,
the Pope.
You know, we have people on the surface. We have
To the
we have
Jews, do the
presidents.
Jews and the Muslims have like
We have-
figures?
Yeah, they do. Like the Muslim royal family and like the Jewish prime minister.
with
Oh yeah, the
Saudi
descendants of
royal
Muhammad,
family,
right?
yeah.
Of the like the Prophet Muhammad. But then who are the Jews though? Like the descendants of Moses?
I mean, you have Israeli prime
Jesus?
ministers. Yeah, I don't know.
The descendants of Jesus? But then they don't mess with Jesus though.
The Jews?
They don't mess with Jesus, the Jews.
I mean,
No, they don't.
they don't, but
believe in Jesus.
yeah,
We're off topic.
Another
Just
topic.
just
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, so all right, but the point that I'm trying to make is you have all these people on the surface who we could point to as the quote unquote elite, right? Who are not you and I. We don't have nearly as much money or clout or say as these people, right? But I would contend.
Say what?
The Ptolemies.
I don't
Ptolemies?
know what that is.
Now you're going off on another tangent. Here.
I don't know what that
Here
is.
comes another historical.
But
Rabbit hole.
I would contend that there is an entirely different group behind that group that's actually running things.
Yep.
Call them secret societies, call them what you want to call them. But there is a group of elites who are still holding on to spiritual knowledge, spiritual
tradition.
Where'd they get it
technologies,
from?
spiritual traditions
Where'd they get it from?
that were held in very high esteem in ancient Kemetic times.
Africa.
Ancient Egypt, Africa, Medita, whatever you want to call it. The mystery schools of Memphis and Thebes held high secrets of human enlightenment, spirituality, human existence, access to the non-material realms. Like, all of that knowledge was there, was present. And now a lot of this was taken because there was invasions, right?
Well, but hold on though, because like we want to make sure. So when you say like taken, like did they utilize it properly or was it perverted?
Obviously
No.
not. It's very
No,
perverted.
We have to be clear.
Obviously
Because
not.
then people are gonna be like, yes, of course, the Kemetic people were this and that. So
Obviously not.
it was perverted, but it was perverted in what way?
I mean, you just look at the system we're in now. The system we're in now makes a lot of money, but is the system that we're all living in, can we honestly say it's beneficial to humanity? Can we honestly say it's beneficial to the long-term growth and evolution of humanity? Or is it beneficial to the long-term growth and evolution of a few humans who make a lot of money? off of it. You know?
You know, I would say that the system that we're living in now, it's really the perfect system. And the reason why I say that, it's the perfect system because it's perfect for keeping people distracted. It's perfect for keeping people outside of the loop of what's really going on. The system that we're living now has kind of built a bubble in which we call like a zoo head around the minds of the people, in which people don't really know what's really going on anymore because there's so many different things that are sent to us to stimulate the mind, in which we would just forget or we just are not going to pay attention to. And this system is the perfected version of what's been going on for thousands of years. For thousands of years, there's been tools of propaganda against people. It started as books, Bibles, scrolls,
Sure.
information.
A lot of those were like thrown away, by the way.
Right.
Some of those ancient texts just thrown out. If it didn't meet their
Being
agenda,
destroyed.
Exactly.
let's just
You
throw
mean
it
like
out.
anything that went against the agenda of
Yeah.
the colonizers was destroyed, right?
Yeah.
Which
And
is
then
still
they
going on today.
Packaged it in a neat little book that fit their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the thing is, if people don't believe us, that this system is essentially a copy of the Kemetic system, just look at Washington D.C. What is the Washington Monument?
Well, not everything is a copy because we want to make sure.
All right,
that-
we're
not
we're
everything
a
is a
copy
We don't
of the
support-
Greco-Roman system.
We don't support the
Pedophilia.
pedalization
Yeah.
of
We don't
little
support
boys
the
and
the
little
debauchery.
girls and
Yeah.
all of that stuff.
We're
We
a
don't-
the
copy
freedom
of the Greco-Roman
and the,
system.
You know, the liberties and the
But
pedophilia,
the
and
technologies that they
transsexuals,
have,
the homosexual stuff. Let's just make it clear.
the technologies that they have, where is that coming from?
Well, the spiritual technology that
And
they
if
stole,
you-
that they came and learned and then claimed,
which
and
they
co-opted.
also perverted.
which
If
they
you
put-
look at Washington D.C., what is the Washington Monument?
It's the obelisk.
It's an Egyptian obelisk,
Tekken.
right?
Right.
And even the way that the entire city is set up. I mean, just do your research on the way that
So
city is
proud
set
of
up.
himself.
I mean, listen, the things were stolen from the Kemetic people,
Yes.
from that base of knowledge,
Yes.
and are being misused. I mean,
Yes.
and we could get into a deeper history, but just listen to the lecture by Nikitan Kementu, shout out, New World Order, on our YouTube page. He gives a good lineup of like how they stole a lot of things, how the secret societies that exist in our society today stole a lot of things from the Kemetic system and the Kemetic base of knowledge. So it's like there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of base of evidence to say that a lot of things were stolen. Now, how are they using it is the question. Now, if we're getting back to the elite, are we getting back to Epstein?
Yeah, that's really what I wanted to talk about with the temple, because going back to it being aspects of culture that people still practice. Now, how they control people and how they like utilize the common folk is that they are aware of the spiritual realities of existence. They are aware of the real history of humanity, and they keep people ignorant of those things. And they themselves are so in tune with it, they're able to take people who are not in tune with it and use them to their own liking. So that's why they were able to do whatever they want with all these humans trafficking and sex rings and all this stuff. And now take it even further and deeper, whatever we're calling Satanism and satanic practices and rituals today, that's even what they're even doing when they're performing all of these different pedophilic things, or they're doing rituals. Like, we're talking about a temple. This guy had a temple on an island. Like, who knows what he was really doing? Like, we're talking about just pedophilia. Like, come on. Like, we all know that there's other things going on. Dare I say, human sacrifices. Dare
said
I
it.
say,
He said it.
drinking of blood. Like, you
Dare
know,
you say?
dare I say it?
So like
There's a lot going
you know,
on.
Considering that you're cracking open like the satanic thing, the satanic word. That's like a big scary term in the United States, satanic panic, you know. And it's like, I mean, there have been rings of child trafficking
Well,
rings.
what
where
are they
there's-
doing with the kids? That's the real question. Is what are they doing with the kids?
I mean, listen, I don't know.
Because it can't just be that they're sexually attracted to the kids. Because then it's like, wouldn't you just want to marry the kid? Or like, what are you doing in secret?
I mean, clearly
with the
there's
child?
some messed up things happening. But if we're gonna get into energies, if we're gonna get into spiritual energies behind all this,
She's like, finally.
like we know in the Kemetic teachings that there are two energies ruling the existence, right? We know that there are Wisirian energies, also known as Osiris, which as named by the Greeks. So that's the energies that benefit humanity.
It's
You know.
at the core, the human energies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we call that energy like a cyclical energy. It's, it's in charge of like the reincarnation cycle. We have ups and downs as humans. We have peaks and valleys. Nature, you see, comes alive in the spring, dies in the winter. Those kind of cycles are natural to humans. Now there's a second energy, which is represented by the god Set. Now we don't judge the gods themselves, but that energy is not favorable to humans. So that energy itself is more of a linear energy. And that energy itself doesn't have these cycles, doesn't have these ups and downs. It's just, it's just going.
So, can we say that since that energy is not favorable for humans, the Setian energy, and going back to like just to give a little context, when we talk about Wisser, or people like to say Osiris or Set, or Setian, we're really talking about energies in existence that are like, you can look at it like a negative or a positive, just to give context for those viewers who don't really
like
understand what we're talking about.
Magnets,
Right, yeah, like the magnets, right? Or we can say good and evil, right? But what we're really discussing is like duality, which is like what they would even say like the God
Duality.
and the
yeah.
devil. Because even the word
Right. What
Set,
they would call Satan.
right, so they would call
Stolen,
Set
yeah,
Satan.
stolen.
It's like a stolen word, right? But even the word Satan itself is like adversary. We would say like the adversary of good is evil, the adversary of evil is good. So just to give context, that's what we're discussing, right? Now, would we say that Epstein and all the people in his temples, because if we understand historically what the Greeks really did and these other cultures who utilize these energies that are not favorable for humans, what they really did was start to adopt those principles of Set, which is where we get the idea of Satanism from, right? So can we say that these temples that Epstein had on his island was doing satanic practices because they're practicing the Setian principles of life, which is unfavorable for humans, right?
I mean, that's getting into now the like we're gonna put the tinfoil hat on. You and me gonna.
No, it's not tinfoil. It's history.
I mean, listen, I'm fully on that train, and like you don't need to convince me. But the thing is, like, there's a lot of people out there that would be like, oh, you going too far to say like that there's all these satanic rituals out there. I mean, but the thing is, if we are looking back on history and we are looking back on the history of the culture that's underpinning the American culture, I mean, all of these rituals were in place and all of these technologies were known. And the thing is, the gods that they were contacting or accessing, or the divinities or entities that they were working with, now that becomes like a question of like, if he has this whole temple on this island, and there's a Greek god of the sea in front of the
Poseidon,
temple, right? I mean,
aka Aquaman.
and a lot of these Greek gods were like of uncertain origin in terms of like what energies are they actually connected to. Then like, what kind of rituals are they doing and what kind of entities are they interacting with, in a temple like that. And, we could go far with this. We could, talk about There's a lot of evidence in a lot of small towns across the U.S. of these rings that include, like, you know, evidence of satanic rituals, which get covered up very quickly by local governments.
I wonder why.
Get swept under the carpet very quickly because inevitably they include prominent people within the town or the city. And so how do these things get covered up so quickly?
Okay, so hold on. We have to stop acting like we don't know things, right? like you guys gotta cut it out. Like, and you guys, yeah,
We're trying
like,
to dance around
yeah,
something.
like stop trying to dance around things, because like we know, like, okay, so like a shaman, right? You could say that a shaman is more along the lines of like a preserver or a healer, right? And then
In indigenous culture.
in indigenous culture, right? So then, are there dark shamans?
Which is
mean-
that was actually my question. Like, would you think or consider Epstein to possibly be like one of these Setian priests or dark shamans?
I don't know.
I'm
I
just
mean, I don't
asking.
know. Yeah.
I'm just
'Cause
saying.
everybody
if-
goes to him. I'm just saying.
Okay, so if
there's got
there's-
to be a lot of things going
if,
on there.
like, let's put it in Jedi or Star Wars
He's
context,
clearly
right?
pimping. I mean, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, he's pimping.
Is he the Sith Lord?
So
Was he the Lord of the Sith?
Take it easy, Luke Skywalker. But I'm saying, like, okay, if there's Jedi, there has to be Sith, right?
Which is Seth.
Which is, I know, I even Freudian slip, I said it, right? So if there's Sith, there has to be Jedi, right? Like, you can't have one without the other, correct?
Correct.
So if there's satanic
Yeah.
priests, satanic shamans, satanic practitioners that have spiritual technology and they use it for, you know, the dark powers and, you know, doing things against humanity and rituals and things like that, then there has to be one on the other side, right?
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Right.
So we have to stop acting like we don't know what we know. We have to stop
Sure.
acting like we're not initiates. We have to stop
We don't know
acting
about
like
actual
we
spiritual
don't know
technologies,
about
right?
actual spiritual technology, and we don't know what's actually going on. And we're here to tell you that, you know, there's a lot of rumors out there, right? Allegedly, because you can't take this video down if everything that we're saying is pure speculation.
We just say allegedly after everything.
Wink, right? So, if I was to tell you that it's not speculation, if I was to tell you that we're not speaking on things that we don't know about, and everything that we're saying, we're aware of. And we're aware of
Like-
in a way, hold on, and we're aware of in a way that we're saying that it's real. These elite circles are sacrificing children, are using human sacrifices, hypothetically, allegedly, right? And we know about it because we are a part of temples that do the exact opposite and work against that. Then it would be really scary. It would be really kind of like, you know, terrifying.
That would be terrifying. I mean, for the average person
To the uninitiated, it would be
to
terrifying.
really admit that,
Yeah.
admit that that's behind the power structures.
But we're
of this
initiated. To the
world.
uninitiated, it would be terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have to get clear. We have to get real. Like the indigenous.
Allegedly, everything I said is alleged, for the record.
Allegedly. So we have to get clear. The indigenous, you know, we are initiates of the Dogon tribe. You know, the Dogon tribe located in West Africa across areas Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, Tambiga, like
Mali.
they have spiritual technologies. Spiritual technologies which have been preserved over generations, which have been used for preservation purposes, to preserve life, to heal people, to heal people's ancestors, to allow people to connect to their divinities in nature, to allow people to come into their own spiritual and non-material abilities that they came in with in this lifetime to use, also for preservation purposes. These spiritual technologies include aspects of nature, include aspects of, basically using elements in nature to communicate with the non-material. And the elite who are out there doing what they're doing also know about this spiritual technology, but they're using it in the opposite way for the opposite purpose. To basically conglomerate power and money. And
using human life to take power.
Yeah, it's destruction.
To gain power, right?
Yeah, it's destruction.
Now that would make so much more sense as to why there's so much war, there's so much turbulence, there's so much things wrong.
Nature's going to react on that.
Right.
Nature's going to react on that. You have a whole system thriving off of these spiritual technologies, which are anti-human, anti-nature, and then nature's going to react on that. I mean, there's no way it's not going to. And so that's why we're in so many issues today as a modern society, as a modern global society, because these practices, which we think are not occurring, are occurring in secret circles across the globe.
But it just pegs to show that, us as human beings, we have to be very...
Pegs to show, not pegs to show.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It
It's
begs to show. Whatever. I'm not an Englishman, okay? I talk English, I don't speak it.
Okay.
So it just begs to show.
Mr. Mama Luke.
No, I'm not a Marmaluke. I'm
Yeah.
far from the Marmaluke.
Yeah, we're just saying you're the.
If anyone hears a Marmaluke, it's her.
It's me.
It's you.
Get your people, Mama Luke. That sounds like something you would insult someone with, Mama Luke. It's just something you would say to somebody, and they'd be like, "Take it back."
I still don't know where Kajima keeps it. It's all stored. In
It's
a
almost
back storage
okay.
area.
For the record, he found out our topic maybe 5-10 minutes before we went live, and this guy is sitting here just with
He's just pulling it out.
I'm like, bro, how did you know this?
But okay,
Kaji's
if we're gonna
ringing.
get back to the main topic, Epstein.
Wait. Let him finish,
All
and
right,
then we'll
finish.
come. We'll come.
No, I was just gonna say that it pegs,
Begs, not peg.
begs,
Yeah.
begs. Right, begs. Anyway, it just shows that no matter what, nature has intelligence, and the intelligence of nature eventually will expose those things that are anti-nature.
Yeah.
And this thing that we're living in now, we call it the age of information, which I personally think is
Yep.
dangerous because information does not equate to knowledge, which I think a lot of people, don't really understand. But information might not equate to knowledge, but we have access to be able to see or lift the veil at certain times on certain things. And this is just one of those things in which the veil is now being lifted. And we have to understand that human beings have to be very careful because the smallest things, it could be like a craving, it could be a pleasure. Whatever it is, the smallest things can be very, very detrimental. Maybe to these people, liking little girls is, I don't know, maybe it's normal to them.
Corruption goes downhill.
Corruption goes downhill. Maybe it's a normal thing. But again, everything has a consequence, every action. So be very careful in what you do, who you speak to, how you speak to people, where you go. Just be very careful.
And this whole Epstein situation is such a good example of partners in crime. Because this man
Yeah, but you guys are saying corruption goes downhill and partners. And
I know these are
what you
terms in the
talking
initiatic
about?
community. Yeah, but they're clear concepts because the thing is this man had over 2,000 contacts in his little black book, and it was clear what he was doing because a lot of this was out in the open. right? And so if we're going to talk about,
he was setting meetings with Woody Allen every 2 weeks.
yeah,
Like
I mean,
they were
weren't
hanging out
meeting.
every 2 weeks.
There was something
And
else
Woody
happening.
Allen is a guy that like married his stepdaughter. Like he
Exactly.
adopted
a young
somebody,
girl.
and then the minute she came
Yeah.
of age, then he married her
Yeah.
and has kids with her.
I mean, that's
So like,
that's
bro,
clear.
if like if there's a pariah of like sexual attraction to little children
Sure,
and
that's not creepy.
pedophilia,
It's not creepy at
like
all.
that's like Woody Allen,
And
and like
that's-
that's the guy that's like, bro, every 2 weeks we gotta set up a fucking lunch date. Excuse my language, like
And
come
that's
on.
That's why I'm saying it's the tip of the iceberg. This guy, tip of the iceberg. Like this essentially Epstein is like canary in the coal mine. This whole situation, canary in the coal mine,
What does that
because
mean?
it's like canary in the coal mine is that thing that
I've never heard that term.
You haven't
I
heard
don't
that
know.
term?
Never heard that term.
Canary in the coal
come on.
mine.
That's like it's like when the canary
Enlighten us
in
on
the
these
coal
white
mine
people
dies.
terms.
There's like they used to put like canaries in
The bird.
the bird
The
canary.
bird canary.
Yeah, and that would tell you if like the oxygen level was getting too low. And then the canary would die, and so it was like everyone get out of the coal mine, essentially like evacuate. If the canary dies,
What does that have to do with Jeffrey Epstein?
because it's like he's like the warning sign.
Okay.
He's like the warning sign that like everybody should be paying attention to if you're thinking in the society.
Okay.
Right? If you're thinking in the society, you would look at that situation and be like, that's just the smallest tip of what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Well, it's
Right?
sort of
the
like
fact that he had 2,000 prominent names in his address book of people he was talking to regularly and shuttling to his island.
How do you have that time though? 2,000 names, 2,000 people
I don't
that
even
you're
know
hanging out
200
with.
He
people,
had
man.
associates which were gathering these names too. And Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever her name is.
She's still alive, so
He had
Be careful.
people working for him that were building this empire of young girls and
Well-
contacts and
But
Wow.
the thing is like,
You know?
so we gotta wrap it up.
yeah, we're getting to the end here.
And before we wrap it up, like I just want to say, like, there's an agenda, right?
Yeah.
There's an agenda out there, and the agenda and the way that the agenda works is like you have to condition people to normalize certain things, and the way that you condition people is you show them things enough, and then it just kind of like registers. It's like social engineering, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
They socially engineer you to be okay with like homosexuality, and then from homosexuality, then they go to changing your gender, transsexual, right? And then from transsexual, then they go to being attracted to little kids, right? So there's an agenda out there of social engineering of the powers that be, because don't be fooled. Politics, religion, and science are all in the same bed. And they made an agreement behind closed doors to say, hey, as long as we continue outside to appear to be at odds, but behind closed doors to be coordinated, then the common folk will never know what's going on. And we'll be able to continue our charade and our song and dance publicly to be able to carry out our agenda. And that's what we find ourselves in this day and age. Do not be fooled. The Colosseums, the gladiator pits, the UFC fights, the boxing matches, the sporting events, the movies, all of these people are in bed together because they make sure that science, you know, the illustrious minds of science, so-called illustrious minds of science, all get in bed with the politicians, and the politicians provide them the resources. And then the scientists provide them the intellectual fodder to feed the people, to direct them in the direction they want to go. And then the celebrities, the entertainers, provide them the distraction to keep people then focused on those that are and things that are going to take them far away from the things that they really need to be focused on. All of these things work in conjunction. Then the religious figures come along and then they say, here's what you need in order to feed your spirit, because it closely resembles the thing that's going to keep you going in the direction you need to go. And they do all of this stuff to ensure that they're able to feed you, spoon feed you ever so slowly, like an IV dripping, so that they are able to direct you in the direction they want to direct you. And the direction they want to direct you is they start with normalizing things little by little. It's social engineering.
Yeah.
And they socially engineer you to be able to feed into.
They start from a young age.
They start from a young age.
Sexualizing little
Sexualizing
boy
little
and girl
boys,
toys.
They make
little
you into a
girls,
Marmaluke.
Barbies.
Yeah.
They make you into a Marmaluke. They do so many different things. And they do this because they are trying to direct you in the direction they want to direct you in. And the direction they want to direct you in is homosexuality and transsexual
Pedophilia.
and pedophilia.
But the most insidious thing is that they're doing it under the guise of family values
Of course.
and the American dream,
Of course.
right? Because that's what they are. That's what they're peddling is what, and then it's like you are on either side of the fence. You're on the far right, you're on the far left, and you seem to be like, we're holding different values, but it's all the same system. It's all the same system. At the end of the day, like, why are we even talking about this? Why are we even talking about Epstein and all this stuff? And it's like, because this system has gotten so far out of whack with its value system. It's gone so far down the opposite direction that we don't even notice it anymore. Even like the Epstein story, it's like many of us probably were just like shrugging our shoulders like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Oh yeah, just like another guy, trafficking children, or giving young girls to politicians and businessmen and scientists, and like it almost was like unsurprising, which is sad, because the state of humanity and the state of our society, that's just sad that it's unsurprising at a certain level, because we've gotten so far away from an actual value system of how we're meant to live, how we're meant to be in connection with other humans, how we're meant to be in relationships, how we're meant to be in families. And that's what really the Dogon initiation and an indigenous initiation will actually give you. It actually starts to correct all of the things that you are conditioned with, that you think are yours, that you grew up with, that you don't even know are in there, that they inserted in there. And that's the real tragedy. That's the real tragedy. What this man was doing is a real tragedy, but even just all of us sitting back and being like, oh yeah, that happened. Like, that's a real tragedy that we're not even surprised anymore.
Well, we're not surprised anymore because we've been conditioned to not view it as a problem.
Right.
We've been conditioned to not view it as an issue. Because of social engineering, like, they get you at a young age to kind of condition you to think like, it's normal to hate your parents. It's normal to not respect, elders. It's normal to not do this. It's normal to do whatever, right? And they do that because they're trying to direct you and kind of gobble you up so that they can use you as a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
And I hate to break it to you, but you're not Luke Skywalker. You're not Han Solo. You're a stormtrooper.
All of us?
99%.
Yeah.
You're a
of us.
stormtrooper. Like,
That's just the modern
That's
way
what
of
they're
saying
training us to
Marmaluke.
be.
yeah, like you're a stormtrooper.
Just a
And
soldier
like
for the system.
you're kind of like,
Yeah.
because the thing is like, there's like things are becoming so polarized that you're either on one side or you're on another side. You're either for the homosexual agenda or you're against it. You're either for the transsexual agenda or you're against it. You're either for pedophilia or you're against it. But at what point do you draw the line? And that's the question. At what point do you draw the line? That's the fight in which you find yourself in. Where do you stand? And where do you draw the line? Because if you have kids, do you want your kids to end up on one of those posters at Walmart, missing? And then for all you know, they're on Epstein Island or on the Lolita Express, being utilized by one of these so-called elite that are just looking at them as a commodity. What do you want? What do you envision? So the question is at what point do you realize that you are not a part of the inner circles and that you're the commodity? You're the common folk. You are the thing that in which they utilize in order to gain what they want. And you will become dinner.
Yeah.
Become dinner.
No matter the color
literally.
of your skin.
Literally.
Literally.
I mean, most of us are becoming dinner. Yeah.
So the question is up to you. We're going hard tonight. Like we're showing you that we're ramping up and we're getting in it. Like we told you guys, our tagline is politically incorrect.
Like this guy was killed, guys. Like, are they coming after us?
Epstein was killed. I mean, you can come, but good luck. Like you can come and try and find me if you want, but good luck. Cause hey, we're like
He wants all the smoke.
Yeah, we want all the
Yeah,
smoke.
two teeps that wants.
If
all
you
the
think this guy wants smoke, I'm like the fire. I'm like the smoke. Like I'm like the guy that's like 1506 Anderson Avenue, Fort Lee, New Jersey, 07024. Like, come and find me.
He's always requesting.
Like,
smoke.
just like
I'll be here with the
is what it
blades.
is. You'll be
I'll be here with the blades.
So, this has been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. And, we're going to come at you again next week. Our timing of airing was a bit different today because we had some spiritual activities that we had to get to that we had to take care of. But nonetheless, we'll be back to our normal airing of 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you like, you subscribe. Make sure you share. And before we go any further, if you did not notice, I am wearing
Gate of Gates
Gate
merch.
of Gates merch. Zoom in if you can and show them that I have some of the first hot off the printer Gate of Gates merch. Gate of Gates podcast. Ancestral Army has returned. And for those that do not know, back to your regularly scheduled decolonization. And let me show you the other version that we have, because I really like this one, but hold that up for them, please, and show them on the camera. Show them on the camera.
Navy blue.
Yeah, the navy blue. We got different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So KEBTAH NJ.org/merch. Come get it, because we are your source for the finest. Give me back that shirt. We are the source for the finest comedic
It's not my size, that's why.
the comedic Dogon. Whatever you need, merch. So come get it, and come get it while it's hot. Because in 2 weeks, it's not going to be at the price point. It's not going to be,
Might be gone.
as easily accessible. It might be gone. We might not make it accessible to you anymore. So make sure you get it while you can. This has been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. Shout out to the ancestors and the non-material. Shout out to the powers of nature and the non-material. And hey, if you want the smoke, come and get it.
To the Macaroon,
Politically
who brought
incorrect.
us all together.
Shout out to the Macru. Shout out to Nebnabal Musa Moradinabig for opening it up, for going to the divine powers and asking and saying, "Hey, this is what we need to do."
Bringing
And
the
shout
knowledge.
out to Nebnabal Musa Moradinabig Nebnabal Musa Moradinabig for bringing the knowledge, and also shout out to the team behind the camera. Shout out to Ibtahuti Hekwapti. Shout out to Zawaz Hekwapti. Shout out to Tutanan Hekwapti. Shout out to Kenny Bashu Saikapta. And everybody that puts in the work and the team that's a part of behind the scenes. We appreciate you, and hopefully we will be able to continue to appreciate you, and everybody that taught us, everybody that's a part of helping us get to this moment and getting to this point in time. And we'll see you next week.
All right, Idi Eru.
Idi Eru.
Peace.